Today I'm going to be talking about the gods and beliefs of the Al Qadim setting. If you're not familiar with Al Qadim, then I recently did a video that serves as a bit of a quick introduction to the setting, so why not jump over there and give it a quick look first, and then you can come back here and give this a watch. I'll add a link to the description below. Before we can start talking about the gods, I thought it would be useful to talk a little bit about the priests of Saqqara. Clerics, who are part of the organized religion in the region, fall into three different categories or philosophies. Even though priests may worship the same gods and be a part of the same order, they consider themselves part of different factions based on how they view their gods. The first of these philosophies are the pragmatists. They are the clerics of the people, who often travel the land and are the most commonly encountered priests in Zakhara. They tend to preach tolerance and acceptance of others' beliefs and prefer mediation to conflict in matters of faith. The pragmatists believe that all faiths and gods have their points, and by learning about the beliefs of others, their own beliefs and understanding of their god can be strengthened. The next group are the atheists. They tend to be the clerics who can be found taking care of temples, mosques, and monasteries. The atheists tend to be methodical and level-headed and believe that a priest should focus on the needs of their flock and the wishes of their god. Atheists disapprove of other faiths, believing their god or god to be the right ones. But they do not push this point, however. Even though they believe that worshippers of other gods are wrong, they believe it is within their rights to be wrong. After all, their purpose is to tend to the believers of their god's wishes. Those who worship other gods have their own priests, who should be taking care of them. The last group is the moralists. They are the fiercest clerics, convinced that their god or gods are the only right ones and that all other faiths are wrong. Most moralists cannot fathom why anyone would choose to embrace anything but the one true faith, and some argue that non-believers should be brought into the fold by force. The moralists could be seen as fanatics and extremists, and are considered by most Zakharans as being dangerous. After all, most Zakharans are quite accepting of other faiths. Moralists accept priests that follow their own gods but different philosophies, although they consider them misguided. Priests of other faiths and magic users are openly disliked and often perceived as threats. All three philosophies exist across the Zakharan clergy and to all of the different gods, although for the most part moralists are rare. There is one exception though, and that is in the region known as the Pantheist League, a collection of cities on the eastern side of Zakhara where moralist beliefs are strong. There are also other people who are considered priests in Al Qadim, but who do not fall in under the organized religion. As a group, these are referred to as free priests, but they have very little in common with each other. The first of these are the Hakimas, or wise women. They are women who are blessed with the gifts of unusual perception and wisdom, able to see through illusions, perceive lies, and are great judges of character. They often serve as advisors to powerful leaders. Then we have the Kahins, or idol priests. These are the Zakharan equivalent to druids. Kahins show respect to the gods of agriculture, earth, nature, and the desert, but draw their power from the land itself, and believe that divinity can be found in everything. The Kahins value nature over people, who they see as being temporary and fragile things, and often oppose the expansion of civilization. There are also the mystics, priests who follow the same gods as the religious orders and churches do, but have rejected organized religion in favor of living as hermits and communing with their gods on their own. Now, before we go over the gods themselves, I would like to just quickly mention how Zakharans pray to their gods. All Zakharans that follow the established gods follow the same rough pattern in their prayers. First off, it is customary for them to wash before prayer, either using a small bowl of water or sand when water is unavailable. It is common to then lie down on the ground and face the city of Husus, home to the Grand Caliph and the capital of Saqqara, sometimes rising and kneeling several times during prayer. In truth, all that is required during prayer is to face Husus and bow one's head and pray for guidance. All Zakharans tend to pray 3 times a day. Al-Hadar, the people who live in the cities and villages, pray at dawn, 2 hours past midday, and 2 hours past sundown. A gong is sounded at the mosques to let the communities know the time, and before morning and midday prayers, priests call to services in the mosques from the minarets. But attendance is in no way mandatory. Zakharans are free to pray wherever they wish. Al-Badia, the desert nomads of Saqqara, also pray 3 times a day. Although they have no mosques and no gongs to remind them of the time, the morning and evening prayers are much like the city folks. But in general, during midday, the Al-Badia tend to refrain from stopping and instead normally just bow their heads for a moment of quick and quiet contemplation before going on with their day. Now let's move on to talking about the actual gods that are worshipped in Al Qadim. The gods of Saqqara are divided into 3 different groups. You have major gods, local gods, and savage gods. The major gods, also sometimes called the great gods, are the ones that are worshipped across Saqqara. They have widespread churches and are household names. An interesting thing of note here is that with the major gods is that they lack alignment, and I don't mean that they're neutral. Now they're considered to be above such things as alignment. A major god can have both evil and good worshippers, and they do not seem to discriminate against either. In most of Saqqara, a total of 8 great gods are acknowledged. There is a major theological schism in the land when it comes to the pantheist league. The cities of the league only acknowledge 5 major gods, and only 4 of those are great gods that are known by the rest of the people. The last god would be considered a local god by the rest of Saqqara. The first of the major gods is Hajama the Courageous, or Brave Hajama. He represents bravery and courage in the face of opposition. He teaches that you should never be afraid to try. The cowardice gets in the way of achieving your potential, and that bravery can take many forms. Traditionally, Hajama is said to appear as a stocky man with a long black beard, and depending on whether he is described by a nomad or a villager, he dresses either in a robe or a set of lamellar armor as dark as the night sky. He's often said to be the son of the god Kor, and the twin brother of Naim. But at one point in the book, he is mentioned as being Naim's sister. With the emphasis and importance of Hajama's beard that is brought up, I think this is a typo though. The thing is, Naim is described as being a gender-fluid entity, Hajama not so much, so I think they accidentally reversed their relationship, as there is nothing that supports it anywhere else. Hajama's holy symbol is a featureless disc. The reason for this is that Hajama teaches that bravery is worn in the heart, not on the sleeve. So a worshipper of Hajama doesn't need a fancy symbol to represent their god is within them. Male priests of Hajama also seem to view their beards as a form of holy symbol, although I doubt they could cast spells with them. Male priests grow long beards, and if they do not have natural black hair, they dye them black in honor of their god. Priests of Hajama also favor the short sword as their favored weapon. Hajama is a popular god in rural areas, especially on the borderlands next to dangerous regions, and his followers get along well with the followers of Naim, to the degree that worshippers of one god will attend services at mosques dedicated to the other twin. The next major god is Hakaya of the Sea Breeze, also known as Hakaya the Honest. She is the goddess of truth and honesty, and teaches that her followers should always question and analyze. People see what they want to see, and not always the truth. But in the end, the truth always wins out. According to Hakaya, true danger comes from unquestioning belief. She is often described as being dressed in typical cityfolk garb of trousers, a vest, and a blouse. Her holy symbol is a cresting wave, and she is linked to the god Haku, who is seen as either her uncle, nephew, or brother, depending on the tale. She is a very popular goddess among the merchants in the Pearl Cities, a cluster of cities that are in many ways the polar opposites of the Pantheist League. Then we have Haku, master of the desert wind, or Free Haku. He is the god of independence, especially personal independence and freedom. Haku teaches that you must be free to truly be alive, and you have to be able to stand on your own 2 legs and rely on your own talents and strengths. Haku preaches that you should take care of your loved ones and friends, and be a burden to no one, but never expect those closest to you to protect you or support you in return. He is often believed to appear as a desert nomad in flowing clothes, with a gleaming scimitar at his side, who speaks with pride and confidence, often on the sign of being haughty. His holy symbol is a stylized gust of wind, and his priests favor the use of a scimitar as their favorite weapon. Not entirely surprising, he is very popular amongst the people living in or near deserts. Haku was one of the main deities worshipped by my latest Sakkaran character, my Air Genasi rogue Alia. Next we have Jizan of the Floods, also known as Jizan the Beautiful. She is the goddess of productivity and fertility. Jizan is believed to be at one point to have been a goddess of storms, and is tied to the monsoon rains and the yearly flooding of the rivers, but eventually evolved into a more benevolent entity as the people came to rely on the floods for their fields. Her aspect as a goddess of productivity comes from the same source, as those who were diligent and prepared for the yearly floods were the ones who were rewarded when Jizan struck. Jizan teaches hard work and diligence, and that it brings great rewards. The rewards for a job well done are just not material, however, as she teaches that the working towards a noble goal brings about personal and spiritual growth. The feeling of a job well done is, according to Jizan, the greatest reward of all. Unlike most other Saqqaran gods, Jizan does not take humanoid form. Her holy symbol is a rain cloud. She is worshipped throughout the land, but is mostly popular among the merchant classes, who bring her word with them as they travel from port to port. The only place she is not worshipped in Saqqara is the Pantheist League, who view her as a minor god, unworthy of devotion. This is mainly due to the fact that they have a different goddess of wealth and prosperity. That brings us to Kor the Venerable, also called Old Kor. He is the Saqqaran god of wisdom. Unlike some other gods of knowledge and wisdom, Kor is not infallible, and is on occasion wrong, but it's said that he always learns from his mistakes and grows stronger with each failure. Kor teaches that with age comes wisdom, and that we should respect our elders, and that people need to learn from their mistakes. He teaches tradition, order, and stability, and his priests can be a bit stiff as a result. Kor is generally said to look like a buff old man with grey hair wielding a hatchet. He uses his axe to strike at the root of problems. His holy symbol is a sunburst, and some priests also carry a hatchet. And as a result of the axe he is said to wield, clerics of Kor favor using battle axes in battle. Next we have Naim the Adventurers, the god of adventure and curiosity. Naim teaches their followers they should not be afraid to seek out new experiences, rather to act rather than to think, and to achieve your dreams. Naim's symbol is a single arrow pointing upwards. And as I mentioned earlier, Naim is a rather gender-fluid deity. In some tales and legends, Naim is male, in others female. In the Pantheist League, Naim is always said to be male. My rogue worshipped Naim at times, and she firmly believed Naim to be a goddess. Regardless of a gender Naim is depicted as being, they appear as dashing, hot-tempered, eager, and filled with life, always pushing themselves and performing impossible acts. Naim is sometimes known as the twin sibling of Hajama, but in some texts their relationship is a bit more intimate, although that is not an interpretation that is universally popular. Then we have Selan, the beautiful moon, who is also known as Selan the gracious, Selan of the garden. She is the Saqqaran goddess of beauty, grace, and elegance. She teaches that there is beauty in everything, and tells her followers to focus on the positive, and to elevate beauty and that which brings pleasure. She also teaches that we should answer anger with kindness, and to be sweet and kind to those around you. Selan is often depicted as a beautiful maiden, cloaked in shimmering white, and is linked to the moon, which is also her holy symbol. Legends say that the moon is her chariot that draws her across the sky, and the smaller lights trailing it are her suitors that pursue her endlessly. It is never said outright, but given her connection to the moon and a similarity in their names, I believe that Selan is an aspect of Selûne, the moon goddess of Faerûn, or Selûne is an aspect of Selan, depending on your perspective. There are some other examples of gods in Faerûn and Saqqara with just slight differences in names being the same being, that I will touch on later. So it makes sense that the same would be true for Selan and Selûne. The last of the great gods accepted by a majority of Saqqara is Zan the Learned, who is also known as Zan the Marvelous. He is the god of learning and intelligence. Zan emphasizes the importance of studying and researching and learning through books and the actions of those who came before you. He teaches that it is important to not destroy what we do not understand, and to not dismiss the knowledge of those who came before you. His followers also believe that it is important to pass on knowledge to others, to teach and to write down your experiences, so that future generations may benefit from what you learned. Followers of Zan are responsible for building and maintaining universities and libraries throughout Saqqara. Zan is usually depicted as a man in city clothes, carrying a writing tablet and a case of pens, fervently writing down all that he sees, and his holy symbol is a fountain jet. As I mentioned earlier, there is one more great god that isn't acknowledged by most of Saqqara. But before we talk about her, we need to talk a little bit about the Pantheist League. I mentioned before that the pantheists reject all other teachings as wrong and are almost fanatical in their beliefs, compared to most Saqqarans. The only great gods, in fact the only beings or even considered gods at all according to pantheists, are Hajama, Kor, Naim, Selan, and Jahar. All other gods are false, at best considered local gods unworthy of worship. The followers of Hakaya and Haku are even persecuted in the League, which in my opinion says a lot about the pantheists, that they actively suppress and hunt those who worship the gods of truth and freedom. Not to say that they are all evil or bad. The Pantheist League aren't necessarily presented as antagonists. They simply have a different view of the gods than the rest of Saqqara, and they're a very organized and tight-knit community with strong bonds. Zakhara, as I mentioned earlier, is the goddess that is worshipped exclusively in the Pantheist League. She is sometimes called Jahar the Gem-Studded, and she is the goddess of wealth. Although she is technically a local goddess, according to most of Saqqara, she is worshipped as a major goddess in the Pantheist League, and is treated as such in the source material. She teaches that money changes everything. Hard work brings about great rewards, and you should take what you can. According to Jahar, a poor person lacks a peace of mind to better themselves, as they need to focus on base survival instead. And money is what makes the world go around. Jahar used to be described as appearing as a beautiful woman with straight black hair and intense eyes lined with kohl. She wore a dancer's brassiere and pantaloons. Her brassiere was covered with coins that she'd received from her many admirers. Not entirely surprising, this image of her has been declared blasphemy by the Pantheist League in more recent times, and she is now said to appear as a modestly dressed woman cloaked from head to toe with a single dinar hanging over her forehead to distinguish her from other women, a gold dinar being her holy symbol as well. Portraits of Jahar's original appearance used to exist all over Saqqara, but the Pantheist League has aggressively pursued and destroyed nearly every ancient depiction of their goddess. The Pantheist League teaches that Jahar is the beautiful daughter of Kor, although the rest of Saqqara would object. Worshippers of Jizan and Jahar do not get along. The two share spheres of influence and compete for followers, so there is a bitter rivalry between their followers. Sometimes it even turns violent. So that is the last of the great gods. But there are other gods worshipped throughout Saqqara, known as local gods. Usually those are just worshipped in one town or region, sometimes perhaps just by a single nomad tribe or village. There are two of note I would like to mention here. The first perhaps not so important, but is a personal favorite of mine. And that is Bala of the Tidings, also sometimes known as Bala of the Ill Tidings. She is a goddess of music that was worshipped and much loved in the city of Mahaba. The city joined the Pantheist League shortly after they had decided upon which 5 gods were to be worshipped, but they believed that their goddess of music to be a true goddess as well. In response, the rest of the League sent armies that invaded and occupied the city and tried to wipe out what they believed to be a heresy. During the last 500 years, the followers of Bala have worshipped in secret, and belief in the goddess has started to spread to other cities, where the Balanites can worship more freely. Several times during those centuries, the Balanites have tried to rebel and break the yoke of the League. Sometimes they've even tried to topple the League itself. And the last rebellion started about 7 years before the time that 2nd edition Al Qadim takes place. In Mahaba, music has been nearly banned, as it's believed that the followers of Bala spread their heresy through it. Music is only really played at weddings now. As a goddess of music, Bala teaches that the voice was made to sing, and to praise all things, and that people should be free to speak openly, and to resist those that would silence you. Values that do not sit well with the League. At least one group of Balanites have formed a group of Holy Slayers. Holy Slayers are orders of religious assassins that exist in Al Qadim, and they were one of the rogue kits available. Which means there are holy bard assassins out for vengeance. Something that sits right with me as a lover of the bard class. I've always liked the mental image of a group of PCs walking down a crowded street when suddenly they hear beautiful music coming from somewhere. All the locals seem fearful and start to panic and clear the streets, leaving the party and a group of nervous-looking city guards. And then the assassins strike. Which side will the PCs pick? It's been a scene that I've wanted to play out for a while now, but my group never set foot in the Pantheist League. Bala is portrayed as a middle-aged woman dressed in colorful but modest clothing who plays a sitar. The sitar is also her holy symbol. The other local god of note is Vatakatal, the warrior slave, also known as the master of the battlefield. He is something that is rather rare among the Saqqaran gods, a war god. Vatakatal teaches that growth comes through conquest, and that duty comes before all. The only way to truly know oneself is to test oneself against others through conflict. Vatakatal is depicted as a strong man in billowing robes, underneath which he wears blood-stained lamellar armor. He carries a massive scimitar in one hand, and his face is obscured by a veil, showing only his red glowing eyes. He is mostly worshipped in the north of Saqqara, along the borders, and he has a strong following among the Mamluks. His followers fully acknowledge that he is a lesser god compared to the major gods of Saqqara, as he is both slave and servant to them. but they believe he is stronger than the other gods, with his superior sense of duty and his immense willpower. Let's talk about we have the savage gods. Basically, this includes any god whose worship is not accepted by Zakharans. Some because their teachings go against the traditions and values of Zakharans, others because they are so evil or alien that no one should be allowed to worship them. The gods of foreigners are considered savage gods as well, although their worship is often tolerated. There are a lot of savage gods, and most of them are worshipped only in small areas. Some wouldn't even be considered true gods by the standards of other settings. I'm not going to go over all of them. There are a few I would like to mention, however, the first being Lofa, a spider goddess with a humanoid head that was worshipped by a race of evil elves killed for their wickedness. This is obviously Lolth, and I just wanted to point her out, as I mentioned earlier that I believe that Selûne and Selan are the same entity. Another group of gods I wanted to mention are the cold gods of the elements. They are called such because they are cold towards humans, or mortals, treating them as inferior beings, often with outright disdain or hostility. The elemental gods are Akkadi of air, Grumbar of earth, Istishia of water, and Kossuth of fire. These entities are in fact primordials, and not even the genies of Saqqara, themselves being elemental beings, worship them, although they recognize their might and power and respect them. A group of evil fire mages, known as the Brotherhood of the True Flame, have at times worshipped Kossuth, trying to garner his favor, summon him, or bind him, mostly with little success. And the last god I want to mention is the Faceless God. He is the god of Yakman, who are a constant threat to Zakhara. Quite clever and powerful, he managed to force the Great Khan of Adao, leader of the Earth Genies, to pledge his people to serve him for a time. The Faceless God appears as a massive Yakman dressed in a robe, lacking a face. He is known under no other name, and even if he had a name, his followers would not dare speak it. The Faceless God and his fanatic Yakman crop up here and there throughout the Al Qadim books and lore, so it can be important to know who he is. And that's it, a breakdown of the gods and faiths of Al Qadim. If you managed to make it all the way through, then thank you, and why not leave a like to show your support. I will be doing some more Al Qadim content in the future, so let me know if there's anything in particular you would like to see me cover, and if you want to support the channel, then please share this video with your friends or on social media. It really helps out a lot. And you can also check out my DM's Guild products, or follow me on Tumblr or Twitter. Links to all of that in the description below. Until next time, Dungeon Delvers.